Hello, hello, hello. All right, we're going to do a quick TPCAST analysis of the passionate shepherd to his love. So you can see I've filled out this whole TPCAST chart for you guys on one of the poems. And what I'm asking you to do for this assignment is to go back and do the response poem and then just look at some quick questions afterwards. And I'm going to go through this method first for you guys, just kind of briefly. And I'm not looking for a huge amount of work in any of this stuff. I tried to give you like good sentences and such, but this is just showing me that you can work your way through a poem. So the poem that we're going to look at, we're actually pairing two of these. Christopher Marlowe wrote the first one, and it was this, oh, sweet love poem. And his friend Sir Walter Raleigh was like, haha, life's not like that. And he wrote a reply, and it's a very tongue-in-cheek, kind of sarcastic reply. But let's just take a moment and we're going to look at this one first. And I'm actually going to play it for you so you can hear it. And this video that I found on YouTube is linked up right here. You can listen to it, and they do a good job. They put some music with it, and I think it's amusing. The music in both of these videos, because I have this and the NIFS reply for you, the music is very representative of kind of what's going on. So we'll listen to this poem for a moment first. You can hear it's very like mushy and gushy and sweet and very reminiscent of kind of what's going on in the poem, in these paintings, etc.
Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove that valleys, groves, hills, and fields, woods or steepy mountain yield. And we will sit upon the rocks, seeing the shepherds feed their flocks, by shallow rivers to whose falls melodious birds sing madrigals. And I will make thee beds of roses, and 1,000 fragrant posies, a cap of flowers and a kirtle, embroidered all with leaves of myrtle. A gown made of the finest wool, which from our pretty lambs we pull. Fair lined slippers for the cold, with buckles of the purest gold. A belt of straw and ivy buds, with coral clasps and amber studs. And if these pleasures may thee move, come live with me and be my love. The shepherd's swains shall dance and sing for thy delight each May morning. If these delights thy mind may move, then live with me and be my love.
All right, so that was just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, so if you go through the TPCAST method, first thing it's asking you to do is just look at the title. Think about what's going on in the title. It literally tells you kind of what's going on. It sets the scene for us. We have a shepherd. He's speaking to his love. And it asks you about any connotations or denotations. Is there anything kind of at a deeper level going on with the title? And you may or may not catch some of those things ahead of time. And that's okay. Paraphrase. As I was typing this, I realized that this octave sestet stuff was having to do with a sonnet. So basically, I just kind of broke it into two chunks. I looked at kind of an earlier part of the poem and a later part of the poem. And when you paraphrase, you can do chunks, you can do big chunks, you can do little chunks. The idea with your paraphrase is basically just what's really being said. If you take out all the flowery language and all the mushy gushy, what is going on in your lines? So in this particular poem, you have a shepherd trying to convince his love to join him in life and love. Come live with me and be my love. Ahem, ahem, ahem. Um, and he's discussing all of the ways that their life will be beautiful and the wonderful things they'll have. And you notice that they're all like natural things. It's not like I'm going to give you a gajillion dollars. It's we're going to hang out in the woods and we're going to hang out with, I'll make you flowery things and we'll tend our lambs and all of that. So everything in the poem is kind of related back to his life and what he's offering. Connotation asks you to kind of dissect a poem in all of these many, many ways. And when you do a connotations box in a TPCast, you don't have to go every single one. You don't have to do them all. I could have typed lots and lots of interesting details. I could have gone way into figurative language or anything else. But I just tried to pick some basic ones to show you kind of some of the things that you could pull out of a poem that help you understand a little bit further than the literal meaning. So you can look at how it's actually constructed. In this case, we've got quatrains, and it's important to recognize that each quatrain, each little stanza of 4 here, is kind of a separate little promise. He says, I'll do this, and we'll do that, and we'll do that. And so each quatrain kind of stands by itself as a promise or a plea or a bargain. Diction is asking you to think about why these words were specifically chosen, because everything in poetry is on purpose. So you could, choose words to define. You could choose words to point out and say, like, hey, this is important. I just tried to identify a couple words that I didn't know if you guys would know. Imagery. Most poems are going to have a lot of imagery. Point of view. Make sure you know who the speaker is. In poetry, your speaker is not always your poet. So in this particular case, we have a shepherd. Like, that's told to us right away in the title. So make sure you know who is the one actually speaking in the poem. Details, anything you find interesting is important. Allusions, are there specific literary allusions? Are there biblical allusions? Are there allusions to other things from that time period that might be important? And you're not always going to know all of those, and that's all right. Symbolism, what things are we kind of bouncing off each other and having represent one another? Figurative language, do we have much of it? There's lots and lots of stuff going on in here, but it is actually pretty literal. He's not kind of trying to make too many comparisons. He's saying, like, we're going to have all this cool stuff. It's going to be great. Let's go off in the woods and hug on each other. Any other devices? There's so many. You don't have to know all of them. You don't have to identify all of them. But is there anything else that you notice that's important? So that's just about kind of breaking down the actual language of your poem. So then you start looking into kind of what's going on and why. Attitude and tone are very similar when you're looking at poetry. The speaker's attitude is kind of created by the poet's tone. Tone has to do with the words you're choosing to create attitude, to create mood, to create feeling. And so attitude and tone in a poem like this are going to be very similar. He's encouraging, he's loving, he's sweet, he's amorous, he's delightful. You could come up with all kinds of mushy-gushy words. We could put in mushy-gushy. How does he feel about himself, about others, about the subject? And then is the author the same way? So remember I said, sometimes your speaker and author are the same person. Sometimes they're different people, but they have the same opinion. Sometimes they're different people and they have opposite opinions. You have to kind of think about those things. But this one is pretty easy to break down. He basically is this loving tone. He's like, hey, come and hang out with me. And he's expecting his listener, his love, to be swayed by his promises. Shift. Poetry is going to have shift in its tone somewhere. You'll be able to see how the poem at first is just kind of amusing on a thing, like thinking about something. And then in poetry, there's usually some kind of moment of realization or like aha. And then there's a shift and they kind of get at their real point. What's the real meaning in this poem? And this is a really basic, really easy poem. He's mushy-gushy and like, I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you that, I'm going to give you all these things. And it's a really basic shift in this poem, too. Towards the end here, he says, and if these pleasures may they move, come live with me and be my love. If these delights thy mind may move, then live with me and be my love. So really the shift here is he's doing all of this promising, and there's kind of this realization that, no matter what he promises, the decision is up to her. And so at the end, he's kind of like, okay, so here's all these things I'm promising. What do you think? So that's kind of where our shift is. And you notice that he doesn't really talk too much about like her feelings or her emotions. Like, I'm going to give you all of this stuff, and clearly you're going to just love it. It's going to be great. And so if you think this is going to be great, come hang out with me. Um, and then TPCast asks you to look back at the title once you've done a little bit more thinking about the poem. Does the title mean anything more to you? Sometimes you will realize some additional level of something. This one is pretty basic. You have a shepherd, he's trying to woo his love. There's not, secret meaning in any of the words of the title or anything like that. So this was a really basic one. And your theme in this is really basic too. He's saying, oh, come and love me and live with me, and everything will be perfect, and our love will be perfect, and everything's going to be beautiful, and nature and flowers and beautiful birds and songs and everything. And so really your theme is kind of simple. It's like, if you come and love me, then life will be great. The end. And that's kind of it. It's kind of a very, very simple poem. Now, when you come down here to do your version, your TPCast, you're going to be looking at the nymph's reply to the shepherd. And like I said, this is kind of tongue in cheek, which means kind of like, yeah, right. So you'll have a little bit more work to do in this poem to really understand what's going on. But as long as you understand this first one, it shouldn't be too difficult.